Yeah, Congressman Bob Good. Congressman, you got to be kidding me here. This is nuts.
Well, nothing ceases to amaze us, Todd, with the wokeness of our college campuses, the suppression of free speech, the suppression of the free exchange of ideas, diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. You know, I am like many other members of Congress, or just conservatives generally, who have been, sort of boycotted when we've attempted to speak on campuses within our district or outside our district. I had that happen with the largest law school in my district, where I was asked to come and speak at the law school, and the vast majority of the students got up and walked out as soon as I began to speak. There was a courageous minority who stayed behind to hear what I had to say, and what this is doing to our students, to our country, obviously is extremely damaging. And it used to be the left, Todd, as you know, that used to fight so aggressively and boldly when we were younger. 30 years ago, it was the left who really championed, the right, the saying, so to speak, of, I may disagree with what you have to say, but I will fight to the end for your right to say it. That is long gone, as you know, from our federal government, from big tech, on our college campuses, and it's really damaged our country, and we see the impact across the country.
Congressman, I'm curious to know the name of that law school.
Well, I'll just say it was the most prominent law school in my district when I went to speak at it. So, if you know my district, it wouldn't be hard for folks to figure that out.
Well, I asked that because over at Stanford Law School, you might remember a couple of weeks ago, you had Judge Kyle Duncan, who was shouted down. It was just an awful, awful situation. Well, now there's a little bit of payback coming because two federal appeals court judges have now announced they will no longer hire applicants from Stanford Law School as clerks. And I think this is a very effective way of pushing back, because I'm not sure we want people like that in the judiciary, and I would just direct people to what's happening in New York City right now.
Well, when you see these Biden nominees come under interrogation from the Senate and they're unable to define or explain or recognize very basic constitutional or legal concepts, and then you get one that goes all the way to the Supreme Court that cannot or will not define something very basic as what is a woman. As you know, and I said this in some of the hearings last week or week before in D.C. when we were debating the Parents' Bill of Rights, and I was bringing into an amendment that said, hey, if a child is treated as a different gender at school, you got to at least notify the parents. But I was making the point that, we got 1 trillion or so cells in our body which are immutably male or female. No matter how much we might try to pretend otherwise or change the physical appearance, every cell in our body is literally male or female. That's how God created us. That's how God designed us. God doesn't make any mistakes. But yes, to your point about the academics and the free exchange of thought or ideas or opinions, we have reports, members of Congress, we have students come and tell us that they cannot, through their own worldview, through their own conscience, through their own belief system, they can't, do their papers and express their opinions in class without threat from the faculty that, hey, you'll get a poor grade unless you write from a leftist worldview. It's no longer based on how can you defend or justify or explain or present the appropriate rationale for your position, even if a professor may not agree with it. No, you have to accept the dogma. And then we see that too, as you know, with only one narrative on an election, or only one narrative on the origins of a disease, or the risks of a vaccine, or the cause of a virus, or the origination of that virus. Only one can be expressed, and any other view is stamped out, shut out, canceled, censored, condemned, and there's consequence for those who express anything that's not the approved narrative.
Congressman Bob Good is on the Patriot Mobile Newsmaker line today. And Congressman, I want to get your take on what's happening and what will happen tomorrow in New York City when President Trump becomes the first American president to be indicted, and he will be arraigned tomorrow. And at least on face value, this looks like the weaponization of the judiciary.
Yeah, Todd, the challenge that we all face is which battles to fight on a daily basis and how we're surrounded by so many crises of our own making. And as you look at whether it's the border crisis, the spending crisis, the energy, climate, environmental crisis, the weakening of our military, our education system, we could name, issue and crisis after crisis. But I would submit that perhaps the most damaging, most dangerous, most harmful is the loss of trust in once sacred institutions of government, our election system, our health agencies, and certainly our federal law enforcement and our Department of Injustice specifically. And so when you have a rogue prosecutor who was funded by George Soros, who ran on a vendetta, a commitment to go after Donald Trump, who takes a misdemeanor charge. They've investigated and pursued and harassed this president for some 7-8 years now, and what they've come up with is false business records, where allegedly on the testimony of a convicted felon, there was a transfer of money, supposedly to hush money, supposedly that wasn't recorded appropriately or expensed appropriately. That might be a misdemeanor offense if the statute of limitations had not expired, and which was, of course, not considered by state and federal prosecutors. But now you've got this personal payoff, seemingly, to those who funded his campaign, to the radical left, that this DA who ran on this is trying to elevate this alleged misdemeanor into a felony to try to take down political opposition. How damaging, how harmful to the country, the precedent that's being set, trying to defeat through prosecutorial abuse of power someone who perhaps they cannot defeat legitimately at the ballot box, in question from 2020, certainly in question for 2024. You cannot overstate how abusive this is, how harmful it is. The leak of the indictment is a crime in and of itself. We'll learn apparently more tomorrow, the substance or lack thereof of the alleged crime, but how harmful to the country. There's a reason why this has never happened before in the state of New York in terms of this charge being pursued. There's a reason why a former president has never been indicted before, and to do it for such questionable reasons is a tragedy, a tragic mischaracterization of justice.
Yes, it is.
It seems to be widespread, even by Trump's political opponents acknowledge that.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And Congressman, we're going to have to leave it there. We appreciate your good word as always.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Todd.
All right, Congressman